All right, folks. Today we conclude chapter 11. And we have one chapter left. Actually, I think Sunday will be... Excuse me a moment. Yep. Sunday will be a siyum, a conclusion of the 12 chapters of Shar Yichud Ve'emunah. So please make sure you join us for a conclusion. Most of you have been with us throughout this time, so important that we not only start, we end together. Chapter 11 is speaking about oisies, letters, creative letters. Now, we have to be careful not to create God in the human condition. We speak about this often. Alter Rebbe doesn't say these exact words, but I'm forewarning it. In a sense, the Alter Rebbe, he is indeed forewarning this problem too. And we could see letters as they are in the human condition. Now, the fact that we speak, and we speak with 22 letters, as the Alter Rebbe says, are the capacity that the soul has to express itself. So the power of articulation comes from 5 dimensions of the mouth: lips, teeth, tongue, palate, and larynx. So some letters, like shin, is more teeth. Mem is more mouth. Ches is more guttural. Lamed is more tongue. We're left with palate. And I'm not certain, quite honest. What I don't know, I won't tell you. That I know. I don't recall now what letter is an expression of the palate. In any case, the point being that in articulation, so we have the five parts of articulation, and we also have the breath. Now, if we were to think God of creating with letters, so we think, okay, just like our letters and how we articulate, is in a sense, I don't know what the word, it's not a lofty capability, not a lofty capability. And therefore, we would think if God is creating with letters, and if it's God's articulation, fine, okay, it's not like ours, but in the end, maybe our wisdom, our intelligence is greater than that. So that type says, well, and it's of course not. Now, of course, God's articulation, his letters are, as he explains, is greater than our intelligence, because our intelligence is created by his articulation of letters. Let us make man in our image. And even blowing, in the breath of life, all of that is in creating us as rational beings. So those letters are the source of us. Of course, they're greater than us. So, to be careful when we think about divine letters as they express creation, that if we're creating on our own image and we're thinking about our letters, our intelligence is much greater than our articulation of letters that make words. So we could make a mistake and think about God in that manner. No, because God's letters are an expression of divine emotions. And the divine emotions are an expression of divine intelligence. And all of that is bound up and one with God. Something that we've explained. A simplistic whole oneness. The divine attributes are with God. And since the divine letters are a outflow, an expression of the divine emotion, divine attributes, therefore they too become a part of the divine and are bound up with God. Now, we have to understand from our perspective, we make a distinction between speech, feelings, emotions, and intelligence. They're all distinctive aspects of the human condition of the human being. And that's how we would perceive God, making those distinctions. But in fact, those distinctions from God's perspective are not so. As we've explained previously, and again to re-emphasize, is that God's divine attributes, even though God himself is so beyond them, he's yet one with them. A paradox that we spoke about previously that is, the mind can't really comprehend. Because we have no parallel of that in our world. So the divine utterance is an expression of the spheres, hence, and just as the spheres are one with God, so the divine utterance from God's perspective, as it were, is bound up and not dimensional. Excuse me. I still have spring allergies, even though we sprung into summer. So by us, it's dimensional, right? Intelligence is greater. That flows into emotions, and emotions into our speech. And on the divine level, it's all bound up. And absolute oneness, the divine attributes, and hence the divine speech is nullified and bound up with the divine attributes. And it's not dimensional. It's a perfect whole oneness. Again, a difficult thing to wrap our minds around. That's why, although we are trying very hard to understand the koyach hapel benifal, the power of creator within creation, in the end, this is called shar yichud v'emunah. It is the pathway, the gateway to the divine unity and faith. Because, yes, we're trying to understand, but ultimately, why do we want to understand anyways? It's to bring us to a greater faith in God. What does that mean, faith in God? It means to recognize that the connection we have is an inherent one within us, and that we just need to develop it. Faith is not about something that is extraneous to us. It's a part of us. Because we're created, as we just mentioned, the utterance of these letters, let us make man in our image. He breathed in us the breath of life, apart from him. So we want to understand because, well, we want to understand because God wants us to understand, actually. And he wants us to understand because he wants us to be able to, firstly, engage in godliness, not just in our actions, but to engage in godliness in our awareness, in our minds, that will lead then to our hearts, and then to speech and action, thought, speech, and action. That we should try to make it as real we can. Own it. That's something very important in Chabad. Owning our relationship. And the more we understand about the relationship, the more we understand of who we have a relationship with, the more we can own the relationship. So the more we can understand the power of the Creator within creation, then the more we are making that relationship real. And that relationship ultimately is not about understanding. Yes, we're Chabad, so we need to understand, but the purpose of that understanding is not, oh, I get you, God. No, it's that I'm connected to you, God. And that's what faith is. Faith is taking that connection that we have, a part of us already, and honing it, developing it. We have a talent for God because not only created in his image, we have a part of him within us. So it's deep. And that presents a problem when it's deep, because we may not be so connected to the depth of who we are, because we have an animal soul that has another agenda of comfort, of pleasure. But we have that talent within us. We have to hone the skill. That's faith. How do we hone the skill? We hone it by understanding. Through that understanding, it develops that connection, that faith that we have. Different idea. Beautiful idea, actually. All right. Let us wish everybody good Shabbos over here. And Julie from Cape Coral, Florida. And who else is with us? John from North Carolina. Yara, I don't know if I pronounced that right, from Denver. Paula from Bakersfield, California. Thank you, Linda. She learned a lot from all the wonderful classes. That's great. From yesterday. Wonderful. Thank you, Rick. Rick from the Chicago area. Rona from Maryland in the United States of America. Great, Rena. Thank you. Diane. Rena from Colorado. Diane, good morning. Jotha from Brazil. Shimon, thank you for joining. Evid. Amir. Benjamin from Indonesia, thank you. Bina, thank you for joining. Stephanie. Joe. Israel. And Lisa. Okay. Folks, sharing is caring. Please share the Alter Rebbe's teachings with others. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from my home in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day, a good Erev Shabbos, and a wonderful good Shabbos to everybody. Be well.